We're in Vegas. We're recording our first 2 episodes in person in a very fancy studio. That was such a good idea on your part. I was just planning to be in the MGM lobby in the casino with all the smoke and having us on our laptop recording. So what's really top of mind for me this week is talking about procurement conferences.
Mm-hmm.
I am in Vegas specifically this week because of the ISM conference. You've probably attended many more conferences than me because you go to a lot of client-specific conferences and or provider-specific conferences. I have more general, broad industry conferences. But I have a very, very strong opinion about money that is wasted on the supply side around booths and some of the things that I've seen. And I think there is a much, much better way for solution providers to approach procurement conferences. So, and I know you are kind of a different perspective in that you get approached a lot to speak. So I think I want to dive into how you decide what you speak at. And for those that are wanting to have outside speakers, what should they do? Like, what are the terrible things you've seen? And then why would you say yes? What's actually worked? So I want to start there. But then I also want to talk about, I think you work with a lot of solution providers that are asking you for advice. Like, what should we go to? What should we not do? So I want to start there, and then I will gladly flood you with all my thoughts around trade show booths and a lot of the waste that I see.
Yeah, so we're supposed to disagree on this podcast. I think we're going to just be like so in alignment on this one. This one's a hot button for me too. Like, I can sense your passion, and I'm going to match your passion. So I, excuse me, I deal with I talk to a lot of startups, a lot of early stage, late stage. I'm constantly talking to them, and the question always comes up: what conferences should we go to? And I say none. Or the one that I love, and everybody knows it, and they don't sponsor me or anything. It's just I love it that much. Is DPW or Digital Procurement World? I absolutely love it. And when we talk about speakers, that'll become a little more apparent. But I love DPW and everything else. Without besmirching anybody's name, I just don't like them. I really, really, I think they were all losing relevance, and then COVID happened and coming back. It's like, what are we doing here? Makes no sense.
So I have not attended DPW yet. It's on my bucket list. It's very, very high. I was all scheduled to go, and then COVID happened. So I would have been there. Why? Since I have not been, and I'm assuming there's some listeners that have not been as well, what makes DPW so good?
So as an attendee, it is exactly what you would expect a tech conference to be. And you first of all, it's in Amsterdam, so it's a destination conference.
Yeah, which is on my list as well. Super cool place.
Right. And then you're in a building. I can't even pronounce the name. I have an outtake of me like trying to pronounce the name. Anyway, the building it's a historic building, and for Americans, or those of us that are, that we have a much younger history as a country, you go over and you feel, when you walk in this building, you feel this sense of history, and then you walk in and it's completely teched out, and it's thematic.
So the tech nerd in you just goes crazy.
And the theater nerd in me, because it's lit up different ways. It looks like a nightclub, and you can see, if you see pictures or videos, the production value is incredible.
And I want to interrupt you there for a second. I think what you said there is really important about the venue, in that it's not at a hotel.
Right. Oh, yes. Because how many times do you see on LinkedIn people posting from, I'm at X and X conference, and it just looks like a sad Hilton ballroom, and it's like the same. It could be the same hotel.
Yeah, there's no cool, historic, nothing unique about the property. It's just at a hotel. So that to me really stands out, is that it is a cool, schwanky, non-hotel venue.
Right. And then like last year when it started, they had these huge digital puppets, and everything goes black, and there's smoke, and there's like disco lights or different colored lights shooting all around and these gigantic human controlled puppets. I mean, and like the whole building is shaking. I mean, it is an experience. It's just and it's fun. And you're there to learn and have fun. And then so that's one thing. Two, everybody knows what it is. It's a digital procurement conference. It is not, we're not trying to talk about leaders, like what procurement leadership should do. We're not trying to talk about what buyers should do. We're talking about evolution or digital adoption and digital transformation.
So from a content perspective, what it sounds like you're saying is much more hyper focused,
Yeah.
and you know what to expect when you go versus something like a more general conference, which is all of the rest of them.
Exactly. Thank you.
It's like we've got risk over here and contingent labor over
Yeah,
here and
exactly.
leadership over here. And so there's a lot going on.
So everybody that attends DPW knows why they're there. So there's a group of CPOs that attend every year, and they know why they're there. They're there to look at digital solutions. They're there to learn. They're there to expand their knowledge and meet founders. Like, so they're very dialed in versus a generic conference where the CPOs are there. And if you're a tech vendor, you're trying to capture their attention while they're doing 50 other things. So that's, and then of course, because you get the CPOs there, you also get the folks that lead the COEs and the digital procurement initiatives for these companies.
I mean, like digital transformation type?
Yeah, exactly. Those roles. So they're there too. So you have the audience you need. You have all the startups and you get the founders and they have a startup competition. So you get the new innovative, not just the retread that have been around for 10 years, startups, quote unquote, that have been around for 10 years.
And then isn't there also an investor
Yes,
angle
and-
as well, which
yeah.
I feel like I don't see investors at any other conferences that I'm at.
Right. So anybody that asks, so I get asked by investors, I get asked by CPOs, like what conference to go to. I absolutely always say DPW is the top of my list, and everything else is kind of a waste of time and money.
So DPW, Matthias is, he stepped down as CEO. They've got a new CEO. I think he's head of running the board or something. Yeah. But they're doing a one day in New York in January, which is
June.
Or in June, in Manhattan, I think it is. So that's also a new model for them coming over to the US, and they're approaching it very differently, where it's not a massive event where they're trying to draw hundreds and hundreds or thousands of people. It's a very, very hyper-focused, small VIP type event. If I'm putting my Matthias hat on, I'm doing that to build hype in the US, to build my brand and reputation. So over time, I'll build kind of a leading conference here in the US. Is that kind of how you're seeing that as well?
That's how I see it. And I don't have any special inside information, but there is so much demand in the US for DPW that I know people are harassing Matthias all the time. When are you coming to the US? When are you coming to the US? And you still get a huge portion of people from the US going to Amsterdam, which says a lot about the investment that companies make. So to be able to build up to do that DPW level event here in the US would be, the open one where you have 2,000 attendees.
So do the other conference providers need to be scared?
Well, I think they need to be scared, but it has nothing to do with DPW. I think their business model is irrelevant. The issue I have with most conferences is they treat the startups as an ATM machine. Like, here's like some conference charges $50,000 a booth. It's like what are you getting out of that? Because the other thing, especially when it comes to digital solutions, you can call them up. If you're the CPO of whatever, you can, like, the same vendors that are paying the $50,000 for the booth, they're pinging you. And if you want to meet with them, you meet with them now. And so the value prop is not there for the digital solutions. So I would which will lead to another point is that if you're a startup and you have any sort of, if you're Series B, C, and you have a significant client base, host your own event. And the second conference that I love above all else, and I have a YouTube video coming out in the next day or two, is my trip to Dubrovnik. And Certuo just had their conference in Dubrovnik and talk about going to a historic, old, beautiful city destination conference, and you're there. It was a day and a half ish, and was a
So that their conference was kind of the model. Zip did one last year in San
yeah,
Francisco, their first. So it's kind of one and one and a half customer prospect heavy.
exactly. And but the Zip one was fun because but given that I live in San Francisco, it wasn't as
Travel not required,
yeah,
maybe
exactly.
skews your opinion a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, to go to Dubrovnik and this, when you see the video, I mean, Game of Thrones was shot in Dubrovnik, and so although I haven't seen it, but you just see this sense of history, and everybody's in the same hotel, so or for the most part, and so you go to breakfast, you see somebody or you stop and you run into people in the halls, and so you become very accessible. So there's only 100, 125 people there, and I'll take that every day because I've gone to, ISM a few years ago, and I think I know a lot of people. I didn't I walked for, like, hours and didn't run into anybody I knew, and it was just sort of abstract and just like, "What am I doing here?" Like, I did my presentation, and then I'm just walking around aimlessly.
I have run go to market for multiple procure tech startups. The number one thing I notice when I join an organization and look at a budget is how much money is being spent on conferences. And by conference, I primarily mean trade show booth type
Yeah.
sponsorships. And I would say at least 50% of the marketing budget at every companies I've joined has been allotted to events. To me, that's an immediate kind of red flag. Wow, that's a lot of money. That's half of your entire budget.
Yep.
And when you're looking at a smaller budget, the other half is primarily going to your staff.
Yeah.
So that leaves very, very little budget to build a digital engine, which is what I think companies need to be prioritizing, is building a digital demand gen engine that drives qualified inbounds that does not rely on in-person events. So one of the other really shocking things, and for those of you who are marketers and in sales listening to this, you need to know your data.
Mhm.
So the next thing I like to ask an organization is I'd like to see a breakdown of what I call an LCL. It's a Sarah Scudder term for likely closable lead. And to me, that's where this is a highly qualified prospect. They've been vetted, and you as an organization think there's at least a 2/3 chance that this deal is going to close. So I like to see, okay, well, of all the conferences you've attended in the last 12 months, how many likely closable leads do you have? And then most important is what is your closed won, closed loss ratio? Of those, how many closed won and closed loss? And most people don't have that data.
Yeah.
And that is shocking to me that you are spending the bulk of your budget on events and you don't have data to back up that it's actually generating revenue for your company.
Yep.
So if you are not doing that, you need to immediately get your data in order. And when I say that, don't be blinded by leads. So I was talking to people yesterday. How was your booth traffic? Did you get qualified? What did it look like today? Oh, I scanned 74 badges. Scanning 74 badges, sure, that's going to get you an email and that's going to build out your database. But how many of those are actually highly qualified prospects and how many of those convert to revenue?
It's got to be a low number. And there's a group of us that do everything we can to not get scanned because, you know where that ends. But also, are the people you're scanning the decision maker,
Exactly.
or are they somebody that are just coming for the little whoosh,
The swag.
the swag, yeah, the T-shirt or whatever, which is hey, I'm happy for that. That's a good endeavor, but that's not a high quality lead.
Yeah, and counting and looking at your leads is not the metric you should be looking at. You should always be prioritizing quality over quantity. So,
well, and by the way, who's going to the booth? Are the decision makers going to the booth? I don't think so.
and when you look at like an ISM or a SIG, I mean, there's exec tracks where
Right.
they pull out the CPOs
Exactly.
and the decision makers. And are those the people actually visiting the booth? In my experience and the data that I've seen after doing this for multiple companies, most of the time, I'm not going to say never, but most of the time, those are not the people going up to the booth.
Exactly.
So what I think companies should do is send 1 or 2 people to attend. Do not sponsor, do not have a booth.
Yep.
Send your best networkers. And
Yes.
that does not mean that they're in sales. I want to be very clear. There are many salespeople that I've worked with and coached that are not good networkers in person. It might be somebody on your marketing team. It might be a solution provider. It might be somebody on your customer success team. So you really need to have a good way of vetting out and making sure you know who the best networkers in your company are. And they should be the individuals attending the conference. And that means they are comfortable approaching a stranger, having a meaningful conversation, not doing an elevator sales pitch, asking questions, adding value, making sure that the person is knowledgeable about the space and can quickly vet, is this person worth our time? Right? If you put somebody in the fun, oh, I had these great meetings, and you come back and it's like, well, this company has no budget.
Right.
Or this person has absolutely no authority. Did you get this person to commit to connecting you with a decision maker? Or is this person just coming up to your booth for free swag and you're going to send a bunch of emails after and it's going to go nowhere? So that's my strategy number 1 is attend in person, don't sponsor. Magic happens in the networking.
Absolutely.
And that's walking around, that's meeting people in the hallways, that's the dinners, the lunches. That's not the standing at the booth.
All right. And this is okay. And so this is just that we have to sidebar into the fact that you have to stand out if you're going to do that. And this gets back to our previous episode where we talked about your fashion sense and the bold colors. And people know you and you stand out because you have put meticulous attention on what you're wearing to stand out and to help, I'm imagining, facilitate that networking.
So on my list, now that I'm working with multiple companies, I have kind of a cheat sheet on what to do if you are going to an event. Top of the list is do not buy a booth.
Yep.
Second on the list is send your 1 or 2 best networkers. Third on the list is what you wear matters.
Yep.
And it is a very, very low cost way to stand out. So when I was in the marketing space and I was at the startup that you mentioned, RSN, and we were exhibiting, and we had like no money. We weren't going to do a booth. We had like a little table, and I sent myself and 4 others, and we wore newspaper print every single day to the conference. I went on Amazon and I said, what can I find that represents print and packaging? Because we were selling print and packaging software. Our newspaper print outfits attracted so much traffic that at the end of the conference, we had people coming up to all of us who were out and about separately saying, we need to know, tell us about the newspaper print. Why are you wearing this? What does your company do? Versus you have an SAP that probably paid $250,000 to have this massive, massive booth, and they don't get foot traffic.
Right.
So what you wear matters a lot. For my new business, I actually created funny shirts that I wear now. On the front, it says fractional CMO. And then on the back, they all have funny marketing phrases. They're in my colors. I have shoes, skirts, everything head to toe now in fuchsia. But those shirts drive conversations. When I'm walking around, people want to know, what is a fractional CMO? Or they read the back of the shirt. I'll give 2 more examples on this. So one of my dear friends, Heather Foch, who runs
Love Heather. Shout out to Heather. And
so she's over 20 years now as a CEO, founder, entrepreneur, runs a toner business. So she works with procurement organizations to optimize their toner spend. She has branded herself as the toner queen.
Yes.
So when you see her at a conference, she is decked out in her crown. She had custom outfits made that have crowns on them. She's got all the matching bling bling that are around the crown. And people stop her everywhere she goes because of that crown.
Yep.
And that has become her brand. And that did not have to cost a lot of money, going on Amazon and purchasing a couple crowns and, some accessories. My friend Nathan, who ran supply planning in Reno at Tesla for several years, he went out on his own and he does data science. So companies will bring him in to do contract data projects. It was first time here coming to Vegas this year. I got him to go to ISM. I said, don't do a booth. don't sponsor, but you need to be there to network and learn. There's some people there that I think are relevant. So I helped him make Excel shirts in bright colors, and it said less of this.
Yeah.
And then it had a picture of Excel behind it. And the purpose of that was him attracting attention and drawing conversation, people to come up and talk to him versus him having to go and initiate conversation. Very low budget, and we'll see, to be determined, the ROI, but that was something that was really important for me to help him do.
I love that. And so I'm going to put you on the spot, and you have a new technique that I'm not sure we should announce publicly, but I think it's worth mentioning because I think it's very smart.
So the other strategy is, and for lack of a better term, I call it lobby crashing.
Yep.
But it's, as a startup, if a ticket is $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, I'm not even talking about a booth or a sponsorship, but a very, very expensive pass. Get yourself to that city, get meetings set up, and be present in the hotel or wherever it's taking place, and leverage your ability to be there with the other people in the industry or companies that you want to meet with without even buying a ticket or going into the conference. It's a great way to get meetings and get visibility with people without having to spend a ton of money to even go to a conference.
I think that's so smart. And so let me tell you exactly why I think that's so smart. I mean, it just on its face that it is. But so as an attendee, when I've gone to conferences, I'm an introvert. So the last thing I want to do is go walk in, or I don't walk around the expo hall, or if I do it very discreetly. And I don't walk in the hallways. I don't want to run into a lot. I don't want to be in crowds of people. So what I will find is I will go to, but I still need to be seen and visible and accessible. So I will find a place in the lobby, sit myself down, and when I'll sort of be this gravitational place as people walk by, they'll come over, stop, sit down, talk, and chit chat, and it makes for me as an introvert the most meaningful experiences. But what I realized is that I don't even need a ticket for that because I'm not in the main areas, because I don't want to be in the main areas, even irrespective of what the content is or who's there. It's just like,
yeah, if you're not needing to go to be present in the sessions and have the food and some of the things that they provide, this week I set up shop. I called it the office of Sarah Scudder in the food court.
Great place to be.
And I had my little booth set up, and I had all my meetings happening.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't able as a new business owner to afford a $4,000 ticket.
Right.
It's just, it wasn't in the cards for me. So absolutely, whatever we want to call it, I call it lobby crashing.
I think that's a great name.
Whatever we want to call it, I do think that's an important strategy. So I want to talk about, let me talk about two more things. I want to talk about speaking.
Yes.
So the most important thing you can do if you're going to a conference is the pre-work.
Mm-hmm.
I am shocked at how many people just show up at a conference and expect to just have magic happen. You should be doing outreach and work at least 8 weeks ahead of time before going to an in-person conference. And a big part of that is sales and marketing collaborating and aligning and working together. If you've got marketing doing one thing and sales doing another, and you're not aligned and you don't have a strategy, it's going to look messy. It's going to look kind of gross and salesy, and it's just not going to be as impactful. So marketing and sales need to align. They need to have a strategy. Somebody, in my opinion, needs to be in charge of the event strategy and then be in charge of execution. So what is outreach? It is not spray and pray. So when I register for an event, I can't tell you how many pitches I get from other solution providers that have done no research. They don't even take the time to look that I am not their audience. I am not on the buy side. I am running go-to-market for a tech company. I may even be a competitor in some cases. So when you get a list or when you're doing outreach, be targeted. Don't email every single person on the list. You should pick your top, whatever it is, 10, 20 prospects, and be really thoughtful and intentional about getting meetings or scheduling dinners or doing what you need to do. And don't waste your time with every single person going to the conference. So spray and pray is bad. Spray and pray does not work. And it also pisses people off.
Amen.
Like, as a solution provider, if I get bombarded by emails from other solution providers, I get annoyed.
Oh, I know the founders of all these companies, and then I get some salesperson emailing me randomly. I'm like, did you know I just spoke at, did a webinar for you or just had dinner with the like, and you're treating me like I'm just some generic. I shouldn't get as irritated as I do, but it's just like, really?
I have my funny little messages that I send back. Maybe I shouldn't be taking my time to do that. But if you are a sales leader listening to this, coach your team to focus on quality over quantity. It's not about numbers. It's about what's going to convert to revenue. Really, really important. And then be unique and thoughtful about how you do your outreach. So something that's worked really well for me and the teams that I work with is doing customized videos and customized audio messages. So for example, Dr. Elouise, if you were a prospect of a client I was working for and we were doing a follow-up strategy after a conference, I would have a key person on our team, probably on our executive team, would make a video specific for you. And it would show the person talking, Dr. Elouise, we met with you, we spent time, we went to your session, and I would be very, very specific and tailored to you.
Yep.
The other thing that I've seen work well is the audio message, which you can do on LinkedIn, does not have the functionality on the desktop. You have to do it on mobile. But I could also send you a message and say, we met for 15 minutes at ISM. Here were my takeaways. That is much more powerful than sending a generic email that has no value or relevance and doesn't have any personalization.
And to build on that, I don't read any emails that are that I could tell that are generic. And it's funny, I get a lot of reach outs on and when on LinkedIn, and people will say, "Hey, I just saw your Gen Xer versus Gen A video. I loved it, blah, blah, blah." And it's like, "Oh, well, I know you're selling me something, but I'm going to read this because you actually took the time and that little extra effort that says, 'Hey, I saw you speak on stage. I love that. Can we talk?'" I'm always like that will get my attention.
Yeah. So that's just don't spray and pray. Highly, highly targeted outreach. Another thing that's really important is there is a gold mine of content that you can get from conferences that you can distribute and leverage throughout the year across multiple channels. So when I go to a conference, I bring my laptop. I'm not a note taker. I like to type everything, or I'll bring my phone, and I take notes constantly throughout the conference on things I learn, things I agree with, things I don't agree with. And then I bring that back to the team and we turn that into multiple pieces of content across multiple channels. And that shows that we are involved in the industry. We're aware, we're present, we're on trend. And the other thing I'll add to that is bring a microphone and interview people when you're walking around. So I may walk up to, and I will pre-schedule as much as I can. I'll say I'm going to be on site doing some interviews. I work in the manufacturing space. I'm studying what trends you're seeing in the space. Could I have 5 minutes of your time? And then I bring a mic, plug it into my phone, and I'll interview. And then you capture all these tidbits of information that you can then repurpose in content. So do not underestimate the power of content creation from these events. Just so, so important. And that's also pictures. I am like the obnoxious paparazzi taking pictures of everything, and video. Video is really powerful. We talked about it earlier that I think video is going to become more relevant because AI is going to kind of take over text-only content, but video is harder to replace with AI. So content is really important. The final thing I'll say on this is I'm a big believer in building subject matter expert programs. So companies having people on a list that they engage and work with regularly that should be paid, in my opinion. And these are people that you go to get advice, you get stories, you get examples, because these are the personas that you're selling to and messaging to. Find your subject matter experts at conferences.
Yeah.
So for me, working, I'm one of my clients is in the manufacturing space. I am scouring lists, looking at who's in the manufacturing space. And then I'm doing some background work. And then I'm meeting people in person and saying, I'm building out a subject matter expert program for my client. We pay whatever it is, $200 an hour. we're looking for 5 hours a month. This is something. And people say yes.
Yeah.
The key is it's paid.
Yeah.
You don't expect people's time for free. But that's another way to optimize your value that you get from attending in-person events by that networking piece.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Elouise, I want to talk about speaking.
Yep.
So I think on the supplier side, speaking is really important. So if you can have a speaking opportunity, I think it's something you should consider with the caveat of what is the price tag. If it's going to cost $100,000 to keynote, I would question the value there. But if you get invited to a conference or event and there's not a fee to speak and or your travel or things are paid for, I do think there's value in being on stage and building your brand and establishing yourself as an expert. So that's just my perspective. I want to turn that over to you.
Yeah. So I do now anywhere from 30 to 40 events a year. And
When you say 30, 40, is that all in person? This is not including digital?
no, that includes both.
Okay.
So, but because I get asked to do, I turn down a lot, equal number, if not more. And I made a deliberate choice 8 years ago, 8 years ago, to work on my public speaking and to be a public speaker, and that probably will be largely a good part of my next career. And so, and early on, for the first couple years, yes, I had to do it and for free, but now I charge, and I think, and a lot of folks, a lot of the conferences and sponsors are like, "Oh, wait, you're charging?" And and it's like, "Yeah, you need to value my time, and also in return, I'm gonna give you unique content, something you haven't heard before. I'm not gonna just take the same presentation and recycle it to 13 or 14 different
Mhm.
conferences, just saying the same thing. I actually I might incorporate some very popular content that really resonates, but I'll frame it in different ways. And my spiel is always historical. So I at the Certua conference last year, I talked about AI, nuclear war, and category management, which like really grabbed the audience. They weren't sure where we were going, but it was actually made for a fun time, and it's because they were paying me, and I took it seriously. It was not just, hey, I'm just going to show up and like, off the cuff, which, by the way, I used to do that before I really professionalized what I do. And you now, when you see it, it's like you can tell, oh yeah, that person just woke up and is just rambling on stage with no purpose, or that person has not practiced, or that person has not refined their message. They're just like blathering on and on and on.
So from a perspective of putting on a conference, or if I'm a customer or if I'm someone like a Coupa, for example, and I'm putting on my own conference, which just happened last week, right? An in-person where they're selling booths and sponsorships. What should I do when I reach out to people like you and want to secure speakers? Like, what works?
Well, I don't think there's anything like, if they reached out to me and paid my fee, I would speak at their conference. And what I think gets lost with conferences like that is they become tunnel focused, like the tunnel vision on, we're selling our product and we're going to beat you over the head with our product for 2 days or 2.5 days. And there's not wrong. Like, you should go, and it should be a celebration of your product and your customers. And yeah, but without ever actually setting foot on stage or setting foot in that conference, I know exactly what that agenda is. The CEO is going to get up there and talk about how great everything is, and then you're going to show a product demo of how, what's coming, and then you're going to get, a handful of customers get up there.
Who are going to say fabulous things.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're going to break out, and then you're going to have a bunch of breakouts where a customer or a salesperson is going to try and, like, if I were like in Coupa, listen up, if you want me to come speak next year, or SAP, although I don't think SAP wants me. But the first thing I would do is to bring something controversial to the stage so it becomes memorable, and so it disrupts that narrative of everything's great. And I remember speaking at the Scout conference.
Was that the spark, the week before COVID shut down the world?
No, it was the year before. And I said, I made this point, like partway through, and I was giving my spiel about the spider chart and whatnot. And I said, by the way, a lot of this stuff is automating. And I spoke very directly to the all of the Scout folks, although Stan and Alex. And I said, guys, you got to get ahead of this, autonomous thing. This is happening. This is changing. And I called them out, and and I don't think anybody really realized what I was doing. And it was after lunch, and I think half the audience was asleep. But like like if Coupa wanted me to come talk, I would do something like really memorable to really drive that. I'm not going to get up there and fluff up your egos to say you're great. I'm not going to disparage you, but I'm like, we got work to do. Even if your tool is perfect, there is so much more work.
Show me a perfect tool, Dr.
Yeah,
Elouise.
exactly. There's not. So yeah, that's what you have to really think about and so all of that is to say, I actually do not speak at, there's a whole bunch of conferences I don't speak at because they don't interest me, because I know what they're going to do. And it's a little bit like we were talking about the booth. They're just going to retread the old content.
I call it blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly. And it just means nothing to me. I mean, whether you want to talk about nuclear war or not, a lot of people remember my nuclear war story from Dubrovnik 2 years ago. And hopefully they remembered my stuff this year. And I try to make it memorable, because if you're paying me, I'm going to give you a next level presentation.
So I think takeaways from what you just said are, if you're speaking, be unique and different. Don't share and talk about what everyone else does.
Yes.
And if you're hosting an event, have it be real.
Yeah.
Have your agenda be unique, and have people bring controversial topics versus everything is perfect and unicorns and butterflies.
Yeah, exactly. And I, as from a speaker point of view, I'll make two other points. Storytelling. We've got to tell stories, and it's not how good the tool is or how such and such company is using it. It's like, put it in a broader context. And actually, one of the issues I have with LinkedIn and consultants in general is we tend to just spew out the same thing over and over. And in my most recent book, I did a whole study of taking everybody's resiliency white papers, and we're just saying the same thing. So storytelling, we have to break out of that and do that. The other piece is, and this is for organizers as well as speakers, one of the reasons I love DPW is the assets that you get as a speaker are they're just beautifully done, professional, and it gets back to the venue and how it's.
And when you say that, what does that mean, the assets? You give them your content and they're putting it in a beautiful format?
No, I do my own slides, okay. But which actually that's another topic for another day. But I get pictures and the video recording, so that now so my YouTube channel has like a bunch of different conference recordings that I've done.
So they provide top-notch media. So
Exactly.
Then all the speakers repurpose it.
Yes, exactly. And so you can watch all my things on my YouTube channel. I have like 50, 60, 70 different things out there that I didn't have to do anything. I did the presentation and they gave me the thing back. And one of my big disappointments, and I will call out ISM for this, is I did a presentation before my book launch just to work out some of the material, and I wanted a video of it because it would have, at the time it would have helped me on multiple fronts, and they didn't. The default was to not record any of these sessions, and so I have a video. Steph and Amanda, I think it was.
I think I was actually,
or maybe it was you.
I think I was there in the second row also.
Yeah,
I think there was like a few of us in case one of the cameras ran out of battery.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's an odd angle. And by the way, thank you for doing that. And I appreciate it. But, then I went to DPW a few months later and I have this gorgeous video that is now on my YouTube. But I have all these photos. And so anywhere from 10 to 20 photos. And that on my website, they're all on my website, and I use them in presentations, and it's great. And by the way, as a speaker, sometimes you have to ask for the assets or for those media assets. And it's not that they forget, just sometimes, or it's not that they won't give them to you. Sometimes they forget, but it's like that's got to be there, top of mind, because then you can actually document what you've been
It's
doing.
not a forget item.
Yeah, exactly. You do not forget.
So another interesting angle going back to the go to market sell side is reach out to the speakers ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I will go through every agenda and I will send a personal note. And then I think it's really important if you're attending to get people together for dinner or a happy hour or something.
Yep.
So here in Vegas, Heather and I coordinated dinners Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday night, all with different groups of people, 20, 30 people each night. That's really, really important. Well, what you do is invite speakers to your dinners. And if I get people all the time. Someone came up to me yesterday and was like, how do you get people to come to your dinners? Like, we reach out all the time. Nobody responds. One strategy is get a speaker to come to the dinner each night, and they're the draw.
Yeah.
So Dr. Elouise is the keynote. We're hosting a dinner tonight. She's going to be at the dinner. Boom, you're going to get more interest.
Yeah.
So if you don't have your own innate built-in network and can't draw people on your own, inviting them to dinner, that's an interesting strategy. And then make friends with the speakers.
Yeah.
They're often very, very well-connected, very knowledgeable people that may be able to provide insights and content and maybe even introductions. And I think often the speakers kind of get ignored.
Yes.
They speak and they're on stage, and then you get the fan club running up for the 30 minutes after, and then they're done.
Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind. But if you build, I have done this since I started in my career, and I have many friends now through the years that I met because I spent the time to reach out and network with the speakers.
Oh, absolutely. It's so true. That's exactly what happens. You come in, you do your thing, and I watch it with other speakers, even myself, and especially at DPW, like where I'm there, I'm going to stay for the whole time because I've made that big effort to go over to Amsterdam. Is like, and after day one, so I did my thing, and I'm an introvert, so I'm naturally just gonna like, and I had Carney sponsored a dinner, like you said, so I was the draw.
That's the draw. You're the draw.
Right. So I went there, but I didn't eat. It was just a drinks thing. And I was done. And so I just walked randomly back through Amsterdam, back to the hotel, trying to figure out where I was going to eat. And I picked this random restaurant, like a couple blocks from the hotel. It was an Italian place. And so I go in, and I said just one. And there was a small cafe sort of thing, but there was an upstairs. So they took me upstairs. And you can't have like predicted this. The upstairs was really a big room, and there was a big long table. And sure enough, the Akira Labs folks were there. Mateus was there, and Dr. Karsten.
You just walked into that one.
I totally totally crashed their party, and they were like thrilled to have me there, and I was thrilled to see them, and because apparently they do that, like that's their tradition.
Mhm.
And by accident, I stumbled on their thing, but it was. I mean, as an introvert, I wasn't going to go seek a dinner out. And also I was ignored. Like on the flip side of it, nobody bothered to like say, hey, what are you doing?
But had I maybe reached out and said, would you like to have dinner?
Totally.
You didn't have plans. You might have said yes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Because, I would have had it in my mind. Oh, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but you know what? Sarah's over there.
Yeah.
I might as well just go over there.
So it's 2024. Conference season is almost done, I would say. I feel like April is the busy, busy time, and then it kind of dies down in July and August, and then it gets crazy again in the fall. I feel like October is the craziest month of all.
Yes.
One conference you're attending other than DPW this year that you want to recommend or call out for people, and then any other takeaways that you want to.
Well, I'm doing a lot of private ones, as you sort of alluded to earlier, and those I find interesting. So that doesn't answer your question. I'm a big fan, and everybody knows I'm a big fan of Procurement Foundry. So they have an event coming up
In 2 weeks,
2 weeks
in Boston.
Yeah, in Boston, yeah.
Mike and the team are busy planning.
Yes. And then there's a C-level executive event in September. I'm really excited. It's another destination conference. I don't even have any of the details other than just I saved the date. So I'm excited about that because it's well, you have me at destination conference because it's going to be somewhere in outside of New York, and it sounds just gorgeous. So
So in October, I want to give a shout out to SIG because I think this was a really creative move that they did. So when you go to a conference, you have solution providers that don't really get a lot of content or education for themselves, right? They're there networking and going to the sessions. So SIG has their conference in October as well in Palm Springs. And they reached out and asked if I would do a branding LinkedIn session for the solution providers.
That's so brilliant.
And I love that idea. So your solution providers are the reason you have your conference. Without their money, you cannot have this event. So just shout out to SIG for that creativity. And I think that's an interesting idea for other organizations to think about if you're putting on events or conferences is take care of your solution providers. They matter a lot. So I will likely 99% be going to SIG in the fall and running hopefully a 90-minute interactive branding session teaching their solution providers how to better optimize and leverage LinkedIn to build their brand and generate more revenue.
No, I think that's brilliant. I mean, that's great. And that's great for you because I mean, not just, sell side, like I can think of 100 people that would, or 1,000 people that would love.
Yeah. And I don't think it'll just be limited. I mean, that was their purpose, right? Because they want to add value. But I think you're right. I mean, anybody in the industry could generate, but that was just a unique thing that I think it was is a smart kind of pivot and play.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. Well, it should be. I mean, it's hard to believe we're in. I think we're in May now already.
May 1st.
May 1st. Oh my God. So, yeah, we're gonna. It's gonna be a big push to. I'm gonna take July and August off, and work on my next book. So, because the fall conference season is going to be intense, especially with DPW in there.
Thanks for joining us. Join Dr. Elouise and I next Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time for our next episode.